What's up, YouTube? My name is Ghrei, and today we're here with a brand new What If series. What if Aizawa was Midoriya's dad? Now, you may be curious what the whole thumbnail and background is about. Well, you guys know by now that I like to indulge all of us in a little bit of extra storytelling. So, for the first episode, I am going to be going over how Aizawa and Inko Midoriya, aka Mama Midoriya, met. Strap yourselves in for this one, lads, because I have no idea how to write romances. Without further ado, let it begin. It was growing late, and Aizawa had gotten sick of the particularly busy month in terms of hero work. Stumbling towards a smaller restaurant he visited frequently, Shota cracked his neck and popped his shoulder blade back into place, dusting the clots of blood and dirt off of his suit haphazardly. The Erasure hero had been debating becoming a teacher for months now, and after today's events, he felt he was pushed just past his breaking point. Not only had one of the villains he had been pursuing knock his arm right out of its socket with their petulant, strength-boosting quirk, while Eraserhead himself was caught unawares, but they had gotten away from him on 3 separate occasions, along with a good portion of their bounty. Finally, several hours later, he had exhausted the criminal, just enough to tie him up and reclaim the stolen goods, nearly passing out himself. Worst of all, he was out of eye drops. Slumping lazily in the nearest stool, the glaring guardian muttered his order to the green-haired waitress before him, and she shuffled away shyly, scribbling down his request on a notepad. He expected her to commence with some sort of small talk or drivel of some variety, which she definitely did. But what he didn't expect was for her to put on an apron and hop back into the kitchen. Between bows of questions bombarding the Erasure hero, he glanced back into the kitchen, expecting to see other cooks behind the counter. To his surprise, there was nobody else. Mildly impressed, Shota scratched the back of his head and began answering his bustling chef's questions the best he could, actually putting in effort on his end. A rare occurrence these days. Something about her, the work she put in, her determination, it got the glaring guardian's attention. As she finally paused to take a breath, Eraserhead decided to ask her a question of his own. Ma'am, if I could ask you 2 things. 1, where's the rest of the staff here? There's typically more individuals working around this time. And 2, what's your name? Becoming ever so slightly flustered at the latter question, due to a customer finally caring about something more than their order being right, the waitress replied, "My name's Inko, sir. I'm afraid I'm the only individual working here at the moment. It is Children's Day, after all." Blinking, Shota pulled out his phone to check the date. Sure enough, she was right. "They probably took the time off to be with their kids, but our boss is a bit of a stickler. He needed someone to work, and..." Biting her lip and letting her facade of business falter momentarily with a rush of negativity washing over her face, she continued quietly. "And the man I love decided to leave me." Shaking off this negativity, she got back to work, doubling down in her efforts until she was asked another question. When? Excuse me? When did he leave you? How long ago? The server paused before replying. As much as she hated to share personal info with her customers, something told her to roll with this. "Almost 3 years ago now." Why haven't you moved on then? Inko, was it? Surprising even himself, Aizawa became slightly invested in this woman's story. She was obviously skilled and hardworking, and considering she didn't seem to have any quirks she used to aid her in the kitchen, well, only served to impress Eraserhead further, and left him with a healthy dose of curiosity. A hardworking woman like yourself shouldn't have any problem with finding another guy. What's holding you back? Her response, much like Shota expected, was to bite her thumb and look away insecurely. I suppose it's because I thought he was the one and it didn't work out. We both tried to make it work, but he was always far too busy with his work, constantly traveling and such. I wanted kids, he didn't. It became a massive problem. Besides, I'm growing older now, so it wouldn't make sense to hold out hope for anyone else. she stood slightly more resolute.
Anyways, I've got a job doing something I love. As long as I can keep busy and help the kind people traveling by like yourself, I can live a pleasant life.
Aizawa nodded pensively. Realizing the conversation was pretty much over, Inko doubled her speed in the kitchen yet again, even cleaning dishes as she went. While watching this, Eraserhead couldn't help but feel a smile slink its way onto his face. Over the next several weeks, the Erasure hero went back to this restaurant every day he possibly could, aiming for the same time as his first meeting with Inko. Something within him just kept pinging his brain, telling him to learn more about her, keep seeing her, and he felt compelled to trust his gut. After all, it had gotten him out of several deadly encounters. Every night, he ran into Inko again and again, even on the weekends. He learned very little of her at first, the latter being highly cautious in case this man was looking to stalk her. Eventually, though, she lowered her guard bit by bit, realizing he wasn't out to hurt her. Rather, she discovered he was trying to sate some sort of curiosity. One night, she decided to confront him on this, playfully. Of course, the night was one where she was working alone. She didn't want her co-workers to know about anything, or they'd tease her even more relentlessly than they already did over this man, who they did inform her was also a hero. She recalled this fact as she saw him walk into the front doors of the restaurant that night.
So, Mr. Hero, will it be the usual for you today? Or will that also fail to satisfy your curiosity?
The green-haired chef giggled as she got to work on the Erasure hero's order before he had a chance to sit down. Unfortunately, Inko, you're not wrong. Got no relief from this damn itch of mine. Looking up, he saw his order already there with a smiling Inko holding it. She must have prepped so much of this beforehand. Suddenly, and all too surprisingly, Aizawa felt his heart skip a beat and realized what that itch must have been. The waitress must have noticed this in his eyes as she blinked curiously. Shota didn't skip a beat. Inko, go out on a date with me. Understandably, Inko nearly dropped the meal she was holding. With a stutter and blush, she looked up at Eraserhead.
You what? A date?
I'm attracted to you. I want to see if things would work out between us, so please go on a date with me. He was already on the floor, bowing as deeply as possible, hands in front of him flat and palm down. Though she wouldn't like to admit it, the chef had felt feelings for this man who'd inquired about her so frequently. Shoving them aside to not only keep her work at the forefront of her mind, but also due to expectations of disappointment if she'd acted upon her feelings, Inko had nearly forgotten of their existence. All at once, they came flooding back into her mind. Out of sheer shock, the green-haired cook froze in place and stuttered for a solid few seconds before scrambling to serve the meal she'd been holding and got to scrubbing dirty dishes. Taking a shaky breath and tearing up slightly, she nodded with a bright smile on her face.
I will.
In response, the Erasure hero nodded and got back onto a stool, beginning to eat. After a few seconds of awkward silence, he realized something. Hey, when should that be? I've got a couple days off next week. Present Mike is covering for me. Inko and Shota discussed dates, times, locations, and plans for a long while, the inexperience of both relationship-wise being highly evident throughout the conversation. Finally, the duo settled on the details and set out on their separate ways, Inko still blushing and Aizawa frantically looking up the nearest pharmacy. This dry eye was driving him insane. The couple met up at Wagyu Rokeru, a nearby steakhouse with higher-end services and food. The line on this particular Saturday was winding out the door and halfway down the block, which was causing the green-haired waitress to impatiently tap her foot. Standing idle for so long was getting on her nerves, what with the fast-paced nature of her job. Looking around, Inko was afraid she may have been stood up. He did say to be here at exactly 6:30, right? Checking her phone to confirm it, she shook her head.
Maybe he had to do some hero...
Before she knew it, Miss Midoriya was dragged by the arm out of line by someone she confirmed a few moments later as none other than Aizawa, who seemed to be uncharacteristically frantic. Stumbling to keep up with him in her heels, she looked at the long line behind her and began to wonder what Shota was doing. Impatience was not something he showed often. Looking up to him as he turned his head back slightly, she got a response. They're going to cancel a damn reservation if we don't get up there in the next couple minutes. Suddenly realizing just what the rush was and the gravity of the situation, much to the shock of Eraserhead, the roles swapped as Inko sturdied herself with her heels and took the lead, dragging him behind her. Barely making it on time, the bouncer poked some fun at their haste before letting them in and gesturing for a waiter to guide them to their table. Finally settling down, the duo breathed heavily, brushing off their clothes in tandem. They sat quietly, each waiting for the other to start a conversation, before being saved by their waiter offering them menus. Noticing a particularly complex dish on the menu that she'd been trying to make in her spare time, Miss Midoriya was the one to initiate the conversation. As the couple talked, learning more about one another, more and more began to click between them. They shared a few interests, but their hardworking personalities were what truly melded together. Admitting to the green-haired chef that he was mostly attracted to her due to her tenacity and potential, Shota felt himself begin to really relax for the first time in years. Inko, feeling far less pressure than in her last relationship, went on tangent after tangent, seemingly okay with Aizawa's comment about attraction, maybe even showing a twinge of pride at it. The thing that she admired most about Eraserhead was actually his willingness to listen to what she had to say, which was only confided to him after a wine or two. Even though the evening progressed into the night, the lovebirds kept up the discussion, even as they walked out of the restaurant. Finally, it was time to part ways, and Inko was prepared to do what was necessary to preserve their relationship, no matter what form it took. The form itself had to be decided first, though. Perhaps the hardest question to have been uttered by the waitress was finally pressed out once the duo had walked to her home. It was now or never. She couldn't wait.
I think I love you.
At this, albeit slightly quiet comment, Shota simply paused, contemplating. He didn't expect things to move so fast, but he knew why Miss Midoriya wanted to know the answer herself so quickly, especially after her last relationship. Nodding his head and looking at her in the eyes, he gave her his best smile. One some may deem as creepy, but was actually rather endearing to the multitasking madame. I think I love you too. The duo simply stood, looking at one another, unsure of what to do next. As they both moved in tandem, they had very different ideas in terms of appropriate responses. Inko went in for a kiss, but Aizawa turned before she could successfully land it, holding up a hand over his shoulder to wave goodbye as he walked home. I'll see you tomorrow, Miss Midoriya. As he shuffled away, the waitress huffed indignantly.
You owe me a kiss, Mr. Aizawa.
Simply chuckling, the Erasure hero gave her a thumbs up before bringing his hand back down to his side and shuffling away. Realizing what just went down slowly at first, but suddenly hitting like a lightning strike, Inko Midoriya profusely blushed and giggled like a schoolgirl. She didn't get much sleep that night, instead imagining where this new relationship could lead. Aizawa, for the first time in his life, couldn't close his eyes to go to bed. It wasn't that his eyes didn't itch. They did, even with the new drops. Or that he was stressed or anything akin to that. For the first time in a long time, he felt energetic. He grinned to himself, eyes wide in excited shock. This girl. And that's all we got time for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. I'm working on the next one. Don't worry, it's coming out soon. And I am still working out What If Midoriya Had a Quirk. That one's coming out relatively soon too. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a like and a comment down below. Please and thank you. And don't forget to ring the bell if you're subbed. And if you think you are subbed, please double check because YouTube likes to unsub people. Anyways, yet again, hope you guys enjoyed this one. It was a lot of fun to write. Major shout out to Abomination Roll for the fantastic artwork. Thank you guys all for watching. Y'all are beautiful people. You guys are amazing. You should feel amazing. And we will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.